Today we're talking about introverted feeling and extroverted feeling. Remember last week we discussed what makes TI and TE different and kind of similar at the same time. And today we're discussing their pairs. So basically introverted feeling and extroverted feeling, FI and FE. So tune in for that. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's dive in. So, if we are to think about what these two functions have in common, is that, of course, they're both feeling processes. They're both components of a very similar, let's say, general framework. It's as if someone has an umbrella, and the umbrella has two different shades, but both of those shades converge together to create a very similar kind of, let's say, value for the person that is using the umbrella. Because both sides are in some way protective or shielding of the person that is actually using the object to arrive at a specific conclusion or to have a specific objective. And in this case, it would be protecting themselves from the rain, okay? In the case of these feeling functions, it would be to deal with emotions, values, and other subjective aspects that connect people with each other. Again, as I mentioned in the video from last week, there's quite a lot of debate in this typology world about which functions are objective, which ones are subjective, which ones are abstract, and which ones are concrete. There's theories that say that feeling functions in general are more abstract and subjective. There's other theories that say, well, actually introverted functions are more abstract and subjective, and extroverted functions are more concrete and objective. So regardless of that, I think what is really important to understand is that FE and FI both help people deal with all of this, emotional world. FI enables one to redirect their attention to themselves and to their inner processes that are related to this emotional or value-based understanding of things. If you remember from the previous video, something relatively similar happened with TI. Introverted thinking also redirects one's attention towards one's own mental processes, specifically the logical way of categorizing things. Whereas in this case, FI does something similar to TI, but it just tries to map and create one's own, let's say, understanding of what their own version of truth looks like. So someone who prefers using introverted feeling will be the kind of person who will really care about having a very clear perception and understanding of their own values. But let's not look at this so rigidly, because a lot of people say that, oh, if you know your values, you are an FI user. If you don't know your values, but you know other people's values, then you are an FE user. That's not really, that easy to look at. And it's not always the case that people will fall into these two categories very specifically and distinctly. But in general, FP types and then secondly TJ types will care more about, or will find it a little bit easier to look at their own emotional life. And this, of course, implies also being more aware of their own values or morality kind of perception over the world. So people with a preference for FI will also have it or find it a bit easier to make decisions that are in accordance with those deep inner values that they hold. It will not always be easy for them to tell you exactly in specific words that this is their value and this action maps that specific value that they have. But deep down, there will be some sort of a synergy, some sort of a connection between those actions and those decisions that they put into place and what introverted feeling tells them deep down. Or it could be, acting in accordance with what someone feels, rather than what the emotions of the people around them are like. So FI will really be concerned with retracting to oneself and in some way connecting with those with that globe that contains the value of the human being at hand. That's how I like to imagine FI, basically. On the other side of the spectrum, we've got FE, a function that is more concerned with all of these things, but with respect to other people. It's a function that cares a lot about the social aspect of things, and it cares about what other people feel and what other values people might hold that have an influence on the group. And what I want to make you understand is that it's not the case that people who use FE are more empathetic necessarily than people who use FI. That's mainly a misconception. Sometimes it's true, but not always. FI hero types like ISFP and INFP can also be really, really empathetic, but in a different way. They will also have the ability to put themselves into the shoes of other people and kind of deeply feel what it's like to be the other person. Whereas someone who has a preference for high extroverted feeling, especially, FJ types, they will immediately connect to the emotional experience that someone has at that specific moment in time. Someone who has high FE will care a lot about how someone feels right there, right now, and to kind of connect with the emotional experience of the person. Not necessarily go all the way and put themselves into the shoes of the other person and deeply feel what the other person is feeling and trying to understand all of the depth of that emotion, but immediately feeling that emotion, immediately noticing how the other person is feeling, and somehow adapting their behavior and their actions as a result, or at least partially influenced by all of this information that they're picking up from the feelings of other people or the values of other people. This is why FE works better with groups. So FE is better at, kind of being in the middle of the group, connecting to what all of those people are feeling and valuing, and making decisions in such a way that they take all of those things into account. And FI will be less likely to like doing it. It's not like FI cannot do it, but FI users prefer to deeply experience those emotions. And we can find a parallel with TI and TE, because something similar, we discussed something similar last week. So TI is like, give me the information, I'll put it inside of me, analyze it, process it, compare and contrast it, and then I'll get back to you. And FI does something similar. I see your emotion, I see your value, I'll take it in, I'll not logically categorize it or compare and contrast it in a logical fashion, but I'll subjectively process it, analyze it, try to understand it from an emotional standpoint, and then I'll get back to you. Something similar, okay? And then again, TE and FE have a similar kind of dynamic in that sense, because TE will take things from the outside and move along with their decision-making process as a result of what those external facts are doing with respect to the person using TE. Okay, and then again, something similar happens with FE. I'll take all of these emotions in, sometimes unconsciously absorbing them, and I'll take into account, what is important for other people as well, what the values of other people are, and I'll use this information to move along and make decisions. And I will not have so much time to just, spend so much time thinking about and analyzing and contrasting and so on. So the dynamic and the speed of the movement within the function changes with respect to whether it's introverted and extroverted. The extroverted function being much more, let's say, decisive, although I'm not sure it's the right word, but having the ability to keep moving and keep doing. Whereas the introverted function needs more space to process. And other than all of this, guys, it's extremely important to understand that FE only exists with TI and FI only exists with TE. So no matter how much we try to, categorize and define what FE really is, there's no FE without TI. And I know most people say that, of course that's true. Of course, people who have FE have TI and the other way around. So the case of all TPs and FJs. But it's more than that. These two functions are so inherently connected that sometimes the deeper I go into trying to understand what they are all about, the more I realize that FE exists because TI is there to hold it down. And TI has a purpose because FE is there to pair it up. All of the analysis and comparisons and contrasting aspects that TI does will eventually somehow be manifested through FE. And the value that FE brings to the person using it inspires TI to do more. And similarly, TI is only able to function with FE because when FE understands what all of those other people are experiencing emotionally, TI has a reason to try to take all of that information in. So something really, really similar happens with FI and TE. It's because FI creates the value inside of the person that that person is also able to take it outside and use the facts to move forward. So I would say that these, pairs and dynamics between the two cognitive functions in both kind of cases are really important when it comes to understanding that all people have an analytical take in and fit into my puzzle kind of process. And on the other hand, they have a process that enables them to interact with the outside world and gain information, either in the form of facts or in the form of subjective, emotions or values to move forward. So nobody is very analytical or very only focused on the outside world. Everyone has both of these sides to them. It's more of a matter of how much do I allow myself to balance these two things out so that I really live in peace with myself. So thank you a lot for watching this video. If you enjoy it, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next week with another video about a comparison between two different cognitive functions.